I just finished watching every single UFC pre-fight press conference for UFC 304, and today I wanted to take a look and analyze the headspace of some of the fighters. Not everybody had something worth noting. For example, Leon Edwards talked about pretty much nothing. Bobby Green was talking about how humble he is after changing his name to King, but there are some very interesting things that we can take away from a few other fighters, and I want to talk about that today, whether or not you just are interested in the fighters in general, or if you want to take a look at things from a betting perspective and maybe take a look at somebody having a mental edge on somebody. Like I said, we're going to talk about them all today. Timestamps are there if you'd like to skip to any part of the video. Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I am your guy with many YouTube channels. Let's start off with Tom Aspinall. So actually, I got a really good feeling from Tom Aspinall, and honestly, that's not surprising to me. Tom Aspinall's a very intelligent guy, especially for a fighter, and he is somebody who's laid back, calm, very respectable person. Tom Aspinall is what you would want in a fighter that could be a champion. It's probably why he's so successful, because he seems to be just a okay person, a smart guy in general, right? So the first thing I want to know from Tom Aspinall is he was open about he's not thinking about the real title. He's not thinking about John Jones, Stipe Miocic. He's not holding animosity towards anybody. He's just solely focused on Curtis Blaydes. I think that's really good. I don't like it when fighters kind of jump the gun and talk about like, all right, after Curtis Blaydes, I'm going to head over to John Jones and take that belt from him. I like the fact that he's solely focusing on Curtis Blaydes at this moment. And there's another thing that I don't really know how I feel about it, because he's been soaking his hands in petrol. That's crazy, but why can I see that being effective? I don't know if anybody else has ever done it. It just seems like a wild thing to do. So maybe Tom Aspinall will be confident in his ability with his hands. I don't know. But going back to what he was talking about with Curtis Blaydes, specifically focusing on him, I do like that he was being very respectful towards Curtis Blaydes. He understands what he's going up against. He considers Curtis Blaydes not to be just a gatekeeper. He is a very dangerous guy in the top 5 who's gotten some wins over some amazing opponents. And he is taking everything about this guy seriously. And I love that, because Curtis Blaydes is somebody that should be taken seriously. There are people who would not take Curtis Blaydes seriously. And I love what he is, how he's approaching this entire thing so far. And the other two things that he ended up saying was he can deal with the pressure. He's going to be in Manchester and he thrives in pressure. So we're going to have to take him at his word for that. And lastly, he has been on a social media detox. When you're talking about dissecting what these people are kind of with, like taking a look at their headspace, right? Analyzing their headspace for these bouts, somebody who is off of or on a social media detox is actually, it improves all aspects of your life, because obviously that thing is poison for the mind. And if you're off of that, you're obviously not thinking about what the fans are saying. You're not listening to the drama with John Jones. You're not listening to anybody in general. And honestly, there's a lot of things to get addicted to. I'm not going to get into that, but it's great to be off of social media. So if he's off of that and he is just focusing on training, taking Curtis Blaydes very seriously, I think that I had a really good feeling coming away from Tom Aspinall and everything that he was talking about. The only weird thing is that he's soaking his hands in gasoline. I don't know of anybody in history who has done that, but hey, we'll see if it ends up working. He's pretty confident in his hands, but I had a really good feeling from Tom Aspinall, and honestly, I'm not shocked about it. But now let's talk about Paddy Pimblett. So I kind of got the opposite feeling from Paddy Pimblett, because he was open about having the worst training camp of his entire life, of his entire UFC career up until about 2 to 3 weeks ago. I don't remember specifically which it was, but it doesn't really matter. Very close to the fight. Paddy Pimblett's coaches were considering pulling him out. That, along with coming off of an injury and losing all of the weight that he's been losing, cannot be good. You cannot just flip a switch, get into training, and become that fighter that you are meant to be in just a span of a couple weeks. It takes your body a couple weeks to get in shape, let alone just be ready for a UFC fight against a guy like Bobby Green. That's insane. But there was actually a plus to what Paddy Pimblett has been saying, and I think this is something that you really could take into consideration, because as you might know, Paddy is recently a new father. If I'm not mistaken, he had twins, but it doesn't really matter. He was talking about specifically Bobby not being the guy to take food out of his daughter's mouth. And now if the bonuses are up to 100K, you can get your win bonus, you can get your pay, and you can get an extra $100,000, potentially even more. He was talking about how it's just not going to happen. You recently saw it with like Manny Moicano. You see this with fighters all the time. As soon as they become fathers, there's a brand new drive in them. And actually, to be honest with you, that's something that I can relate to right now. And I'm not obviously like not competing in the UFC or anything, but once you have a kid, it's weird how that works, because I have never been more driven in my entire life to make money and provide. And I can't imagine what it's like if you're in a cage fight with somebody. I can guarantee you that it's going, and if any of you are watching out there and you have kids, obviously you're going to look at your opponent and say, you are not taking food from my daughter's mouth, especially when something like 100K plus is on the line. So I think that's actually really good coming from Paddy the Baddy, but it really, really worries me hearing about that poor training camp that he's been through. So something good, something bad to take away from Paddy Pimblett's press conference. But let's talk about Belal Muhammad. I don't know about you guys, but Belal Muhammad seems to be walking with like an extra pep in his step. This dude is very confident, and it showed in his media day, in his press conference. Like, Belal is feeling himself right now. Even with it, like later on after the press conference, they had the actual press conference with the fans and everything, and Leon just did the little flinch thing, and Belal just stood there like, no, I'm gonna walk through you. So the other thing to mention is that Belal Muhammad has been very open about actually hating Leon Edwards. And of course, anybody who is in the martial arts space knows that having emotions involved into your fight doesn't typically help you. It makes you make bad decisions, and it's not good. But Belal Muhammad was very adamant that his hate for Leon Edwards will improve his game. We'll see how that works out. If I'm not mistaken, correct me down below in the comments if I'm wrong. I don't think Belal Muhammad has went into a fight really hating somebody as much as he's been hating Leon Edwards, but I could be wrong about that. Other than that, he's mentioned that he's been training for Leon since the last loss, and he's also only training to improve himself. It's not necessarily like, okay, we're training takedowns. He's just kind of fixing up his entire game. He wants to go in there as the best version of himself that he could possibly be. So I got a good feeling coming from Belal Muhammad, man. The dude is more confident than I have ever seen him, ever, and he's taken on an amazing fighter in Leon Edwards. And lastly, I wanted to talk about Curtis Blaydes. Honestly, there's something very little that I wanted to talk about Curtis Blaydes, because a lot of it was actually like a wholesome press conference. He was just interacting with the media and having a ton of fun. He was being really respectful of his opponents and being respectful of the entire UFC. He's just grateful to be there, and I love Curtis Blaydes, man. Huge fan of the guy. I hope he wins out of everybody on the card. But the only thing to really note from his press conference and talking about the fight is he said that he doesn't believe in game plans. And it was very interesting hearing this, because it makes sense in principle, where it's like, okay, if you're in the fight, if the takedown's there, I'm going to go for the takedown. If the striking's working out, I'm going to go for the striking. But the problem is, we've seen Curtis Blaydes caught way too many times for me to say, okay, I don't know if not having a game plan is really the way you should be going about it. For example, Derek Lewis. Why would you punch with him the entire time? Right? I understand that he got caught going for a takedown, but still, you know, the game plan should have been to take him down right away, wear him out, and you could have finished him in the first round. I understand my position that I'm not Curtis Blaydes, and Curtis Blaydes is infinitely a better fighter than I could ever hope to be. But I don't think that's really a great idea to go into a fight with a guy as dangerous and as opposing as Tom Aspinall and not have a game plan. I understand the logic there. I just don't necessarily think it's a good idea for Curtis Blaydes specifically. But guys, speaking of Curtis Blaydes, I want you to take a look at this video on screen right now. It's ranking every MMA YouTuber based by their logos. It's a great video if you want to keep watching the channel, guys. I will see you over there. Take care.